The darkness of space was endless. No stars seemed bright enough to break the heavy silence. A small broken ship floated in the middle of nothing. Its metal surface carried the scars of a violent battle, and its weak lights blinked like dying fireflies. Inside that ship, a lone human officer sat in the cockpit staring at the cold void. His name was Captain Elias Ward. Once he had been a proud officer of the human fleet. Now he was nothing more than a survivor trapped in deep space. The silence pressed on him from all sides, louder than any explosion. The ship's systems whispered warnings. Oxygen low, power failing, engines destroyed. Elias had sent out a distress call 3 days ago. His voice had echoed through the empty void. "This is Captain Elias Ward, human fleet officer. My ship is crippled, requesting immediate assistance." Since then, nothing. No answer. No reply. Only silence. He leaned back against the cold chair, his body heavy with exhaustion. His food packs were almost gone. Water was running low. Soon, even the air he breathed would vanish. Elias knew what that meant. Space was not merciful. The cockpit smelled of burnt wires and recycled air. Each beep from the failing console was like the ticking of a clock, counting down his last moments. Yet Elias did not close his eyes. He kept staring outside into the black sea of space. He was a soldier, and soldiers did not surrender, even when alone. But still, the silence was crushing. It felt alive, like a predator watching him, waiting for him to break. Sometimes Elias thought he could hear whispers in that silence, his own mind playing tricks on him, his own fears speaking back. He remembered the battle. His fleet had clashed with alien raiders near the edge of known space. The fighting had been brutal. Human warships had stood strong, but Elias's vessel had been caught in the crossfire. One hit, then another, then fire across the decks. He had ordered his crew to evacuate. He had stayed behind to buy them time. When the explosions cleared, he was the only one left alive in the wreck. Now, drifting alone, he wondered if his crew had made it. He wondered if anyone even knew he was still here. His stomach growled weakly. He tore open the last ration bar and chewed slowly as if eating slower would make it last longer. The taste was like chalk, but at least it was something. He sipped the final drops of water, his throat burning for more. "Hold on," he whispered to himself. "Just hold on." But his heart knew the truth. Without rescue, his story would end in this silence. He walked through the narrow corridors of the ship. The walls were cold, cracked, and covered in smoke marks. His boots echoed in the emptiness. Once these halls had been full of life, his crew laughing, talking, working together. Now, the only sound was the distant hum of a broken engine trying to breathe. When he returned to the cockpit, he checked the radar again. Nothing. Just static and empty space. He tapped the screen with his finger as if hitting it might create hope. But the radar was honest. It showed what was real. He closed his eyes and listened to the silence. Somewhere deep inside, he still hoped. Hope was a fragile thing, but it was the only thing keeping him alive. Humans were strange that way. Even when crushed, even when abandoned, they refused to let hope die. Hours passed like years. Elias felt his eyelids grow heavy, but he fought against sleep. He could not afford to close his eyes. What if a signal came? What if someone answered? He needed to stay awake no matter how much his body screamed for rest. Suddenly, the console beeped. Elias jumped. His heart pounded in his chest. A signal? A reply? His hands shook as he reached for the controls. He adjusted the frequency, searching through the static. For a brief second, he thought he heard something. A faint noise. A whisper. But then, silence again. His head dropped, and he let out a broken laugh. "Talking to ghosts now, Elias," he muttered. Still, that tiny sound had lit a spark inside him. If there was even a chance that someone was out there, he would not give up. He tightened his grip on the console. His eyes hardened. "I'm still here," he said softly into the void. I'm human. I will not disappear so easily. Outside, the stars seemed to watch him silently. The void did not answer. But Elias Ward did not stop speaking. He sent out another message, his voice firm even in weakness. This is Captain Elias Ward of the human fleet. Stranded. Requesting assistance. I am not giving up. His words disappeared into the endless dark. Maybe they would die there, unheard. Maybe not. As the silence wrapped around him again, Elias leaned back and stared into the void. He knew something was coming. He could feel it. Somewhere in the cold dark, the future was moving closer. For now, he was alone. But this silence, it would not last forever. The silence had become his only companion. Captain Elias Ward sat in the cockpit, listening to the endless hum of dying systems. His eyes were heavy, but his mind was sharp, trained to notice even the smallest change. He had almost accepted that the void would be his grave when something unusual happened. The console flickered. For hours, maybe days, it had shown nothing but static lines. Now one of those lines moved. A faint ripple appeared on the radar, weak and broken. Elias leaned forward, his heart suddenly awake. Impossible, he whispered. The signal was too faint to identify. Not human, not alien, not even mechanical, at first glance. Just a ghost, an echo in the dark. But in space, even ghosts meant something. Nothing came from nothing. He adjusted the frequency. Static cracked like broken glass. The sound filled the cockpit, sharp and painful. But Elias kept turning the dial. Then, buried inside the noise, he heard it. A pulse. It came slow and uneven, like a heartbeat. One thump. Then silence. Then another. Elias's skin crawled. He had heard many signals during his years in the fleet. Distress beacons, enemy codes, navigation markers. But never anything like this. This was not a machine. This was not random. This felt alive. Who's out there? He said into the darkness. His voice was steady, but his chest tightened. Identify yourself. No reply. Only the pulse continued, slow and patient, as if waiting for him. The officer leaned back, unsure if his mind was playing tricks. Isolation could do that. Silence, hunger, thirst. It could all twist the brain until shadows seemed real. But his training screamed at him. Trust the instruments. Machines did not hallucinate. He checked the distance. The pulse came from far, very far, but it was real. Something, or someone, was transmitting. His fingers hovered over the comm switch. Should he answer? The galaxy was wide and cruel. The human fleet had many enemies. Some species captured survivors not to save them, but to study them, to tear them apart, bone by bone, and learn what made humans strong. Elias had seen the aftermath of alien cruelty before. He knew better than to call blindly into the dark. But the pulse, it was steady, almost calm. Not like enemy taunts, not like bait. Something about it felt different. The captain pressed the comm button. His voice was low, careful. This is Captain Elias Ward of the human fleet. Stranded vessel. Identify yourself. For a long moment, there was nothing. Only static. Then, the pulse grew louder, stronger, like it was answering. Thump. Silence. Thump. He frowned. Is that Morse code? Morse was an ancient human system, long outdated but never forgotten. Every officer had learned it during training. Elias's mind raced, translating the rhythm. The signal spelled a single word. Wait. Elias froze. His throat went dry. Not alien, not random. This was human. His heart pounded. Somewhere in this endless void, a human ship was listening. A warship, perhaps. Maybe his fleet. Maybe someone who could save him. But how had they found him? And why? Were they only saying, wait? He slammed his fist against the console. Damn it, speak clearly, I don't have time to wait. His voice echoed against the empty cockpit walls. The pulse stopped. The silence returned, heavier than before. Elias felt his hope crack under the weight. Had he scared them away? Was it only a trick of his exhausted mind? Minutes stretched into hours. The officer leaned against the chair, his body weak, his will fading. He stared at the radar, begging for another sign. Then the pulse returned. Faster now. Urgent. ... Dash. ... Elias's training worked again, decoding every beat. His eyes widened. Hold, they are coming. The air in his lungs felt electric. A warship was on its way. A human warship. His warship. But then, something else appeared on the radar. Another ripple, this one sharper, more chaotic. Not calm, not steady. Predatory. Aliens. The console screamed warnings as unknown signatures entered the system. 3, maybe 4 ships, all closing fast. Their signals were jagged, aggressive. Elias had seen them before. He knew the patterns. Raiders, hunters, the kind that never left survivors. His heart raced. The warship was coming, but would it be too late? He spoke into the comm, his voice trembling but firm. This is Captain Ward. Enemy contact confirmed. Repeat, enemy contact confirmed. If you're really out there, hurry. The ghost pulse answered one last time, strong and unbroken. Hold. Human warship en route. Elias stared at the console, sweat dripping down his face. Outside, the void seemed to shift. The stars no longer looked calm. They looked like sharp blades, waiting to cut. The silence was gone now. In its place came the signals of war, ghosts, hunters, and the promise of something greater. Captain Elias Ward sat straighter in his chair. His eyes burned with new fire. If this was the end, he would face it as a human should, defiant, unbroken, and unafraid. But deep in his heart, a spark of hope whispered, "The warship is coming." And with it, the silence of space would finally be shattered. Captain Elias Ward had almost forgotten what hope felt like. For days, there had been only silence, hunger, and fear. But now, the radar screamed with signals. 2 very different signals. One was sharp and hostile, alien raiders moving closer, their formation like predators surrounding prey. The other was steady and strong, the pulse of a human warship cutting through the void like a lifeline. Elias sat in the cockpit, his eyes locked on the glowing screen. His heartbeat in rhythm, with the human signal, faster, stronger, louder. They were coming, his people, his fleet. "Come on," he whispered. His voice was cracked, weak from thirst, but his spirit burned bright. "Come on before it's too late." The alien ships arrived first. 4 black shapes appeared in the distance, their hulls like jagged blades against the stars. Their engines burned with sickly green light. Even from far away, Elias could feel the hatred that radiated from them. These were not rescuers. These were hunters. His broken ship shuddered as enemy scanners swept across it. They had found him. One of the raider ships sent a signal, an open broadcast. A voice cold and metallic filled the cockpit. "Human vessel, power down, no resistance. You belong to us now." Elias clenched his fists. His ship had no weapons, no shields, nothing left to fight with. "But still," he whispered back, "I don't belong to you. I never will." The aliens did not wait for a reply. Their ships spread into attack formation, preparing to strike. The void lit with the glow of their weapons charging. Then it happened. Shadow bigger than all others appeared behind them. A massive human warship burst into view, its hull shining with steel and light, its cannons glowing with power. It moved with the strength of a predator, but this predator hunted for humanity. The comms crackled. A human voice, strong and commanding, cut through the static. "This is the HSS Vanguard. All units prepare for combat. Target alien raiders. Protect the stranded vessel. Fire at will." Elias's heart surged. He knew that voice. Captain Adrienne, Kane, one of the fleet's finest. Her reputation was legendary, fearless in battle, loyal to the last breath. If she had come, then Elias was not alone anymore. The Vanguard's cannons opened fire. Beams of pure energy tore across the void, striking the nearest raider ship. The alien vessel exploded in a flash of fire, fragments spinning into the dark. The remaining 3 raiders screamed forward, weapons blazing, but the warship did not flinch. Shield barriers flared blue as enemy fire slammed against them. The Vanguard's guns roared again, shaking the stars themselves. Elias gripped the arm of his chair, his eyes wide. He had seen battles before, but watching it from the eyes of a dying man was different. Every shot, every explosion was a promise. Humanity does not abandon its own. The comms opened again. Captain Kane's voice spoke directly to him. "Captain Ward, this is the Vanguard. Hold your position. We've got you." For a moment, Elias could not speak. His throat closed, emotion threatening to break his composure. Finally, he forced out the words, "Understood. And thank you." "Save your strength," Kane replied firmly. "We'll get you home." The alien ship circled, fast and desperate like wolves around a lion. They fired volley after volley, but the Vanguard pressed forward, answering with thunder. One by one, human firepower broke their formation. Another raider fell, its hull ripped open by torpedoes. The third tried to flee, but the Vanguard's guns tracked it with merciless precision. A single blast tore it apart. Only one alien ship remained. Instead of fleeing, it turned its weapons toward Elias's broken vessel. A desperate move, a cruel move. If they could not win, they would take the human survivor with them. Elias's console screamed warnings. Enemy lock-on confirmed. Weapons charging. His heart froze. But before the alien could fire, the Vanguard moved. It surged forward, shields flaring, and placed itself directly between Elias's wreck and the enemy. The raiders' shots slammed into the warship's hull, but the shields held. "Not today," Kane's voice growled over the comms. The Vanguard's cannons roared one last time. The final raider exploded into dust, its fire swallowed by the void. Silence returned, but this silence was different. It was victory. Elias slumped back in his chair, his body weak, his eyes wet. He had seen death coming, and instead he had seen humanity rise. The comms clicked again. "Ward, prepare for retrieval. We're sending a rescue craft now." Elias closed his eyes and let out a slow breath. His ship was broken, his body was failing, but his spirit was alive, because he knew now, without doubt, what made humans different. They never abandoned their own. And as the rescue craft left the belly of the Vanguard and rushed toward him, Elias whispered into the void, "I told you, silence. You would not keep me forever." The stars glimmered around him, no longer cold. For the first time in days, he was not alone. Humanity had come. The battle was over, but the war was not. Captain Elias Ward sat in the rescue craft, staring out through the small viewport as it carried him toward the HSS Vanguard. His heart was still racing from what he had just witnessed, the thunder of cannons, the flash of alien ships exploding, the warship standing unbroken in the dark. Humanity had answered. Humanity had saved him. But deep inside, he knew something was wrong. When the rescue craft docked, Elias was pulled aboard. Medical officers rushed to him, checking his vitals, wrapping a blanket around his shoulders. The warmth felt almost strange after the cold silence of his wrecked ship. Yet even as his body began to recover, his mind stayed sharp. Soldiers were trained to sense danger, and Elias felt danger close, closer than ever. Captain Adrienne Kane appeared, tall and commanding, her uniform dark but sharp, her eyes bright with determination. She offered him a nod. "Welcome back, Ward. You did well to survive this long." Elias tried to stand, but his legs trembled. Kane placed a steady hand on his shoulder. "No need for formality. You're safe now. That's what matters." Safe. The word tasted fragile. Elias wanted to believe it, but the shadows around them whispered otherwise. The Vanguard moved deeper into the system, scanning for any more threats. The crew worked with quiet focus, their voices low, their movements quick. Elias listened, catching pieces of conversation. Those raiders shouldn't have been this far inside the sector. Coordinates don't match their usual routes. Something's pushing them closer. Something was wrong. The aliens weren't just hunting blindly. They had come with purpose, and Elias's distress signal had been the bait. Hours passed. The wounded warship patched its shields, reloaded its weapons, and prepared for whatever was coming next. Elias stayed near the observation deck, watching the stars stretch endlessly ahead. He thought about his broken ship, about the silence that had nearly swallowed him. But now the silence felt different. It wasn't empty, it was waiting. Then the alarm sounded. Red lights flashed across the deck. The ship trembled as fresh signatures appeared on the radar. Dozens this time. Alien raiders, far more than before. They emerged from the void like a swarm, their engines glowing, their weapons already hot. Elias's blood ran cold. The first group had been scouts. These were the hunters, the real force. Captain Kane's voice cut through the panic. All hands, to battle stations, shields up, arm every gun. The crew moved with precision, but the weight of the situation hung heavy. The aliens had not come to test them this time. They had come to destroy them. Elias pressed against the glass of the viewport. His mind raced. Why so many? Why here? Then the thought hit him like a blade. They knew. The aliens had intercepted his signal, and instead of ignoring it, they had used it. His cry for help had brought not only the vanguard, but also the hunters waiting in the dark. Shame and fury twisted inside him. "This is my fault," he muttered. A nearby officer shook his head. "No, Captain. You did what you had to. They would have found you anyway." But Elias wasn't sure. He could only watch as the alien swarm tightened its formation. Their ships moved like shadows with sharp teeth, circling the vanguard, pressing from every angle. The warship fired first. Great beams of light tore into the swarm, shredding 2 enemy ships before they could react. But for every raider destroyed, more poured forward. Explosions lit the void, painting the dark with fire. The vanguard shook under the pressure, its shields glowing as enemy fire slammed again and again. Kane stood tall at the command station, her voice steady. "Keep firing. They think we'll break, but we are human. We hold the line." Her words ignited the crew. Cannons roared, torpedoes screamed into the dark, and the vanguard stood its ground. But Elias could see the truth. This battle was different. The numbers were overwhelming. Shadows pressed on them from all sides. One alien ship broke through the defense line and charged directly at the warship. Its hull glowed with energy, preparing to ram. "Impact incoming," someone shouted. The vanguard turned sharply, its guns, unleashing a furious blast. The raider exploded just meters away, the shockwave slamming against the shields. The ship groaned under the impact, but it held. Elias's heart hammered. Every second felt like the edge of death. Yet even through the fear, he felt something else, pride. Humans were outnumbered, outgunned, and yet they did not retreat. Where other species would run, humans fought. But deep in his chest, the dread grew heavier. The aliens weren't fighting like raiders anymore. They were organized, disciplined, almost military. Something had changed. This wasn't just an attack. It was part of something bigger. The shadows of deep space had grown teeth. And as explosions thundered across the void, Elias whispered to himself, "This isn't about me anymore. This is a war." The void was no longer silent. It screamed with fire. Cannons roared, missiles streaked across the darkness, and ships exploded like dying stars. The HSS Vanguard stood at the center of it all, a wall of human steel against a sea of alien shadows. Captain Elias Ward gripped the railing on the observation deck. His body was still weak from days stranded, but his eyes burned with new life. He had never seen a battle like this, not even during his years in the fleet. Alien raiders swarmed in every direction. They came in packs, fast and ruthless, their ships moving like blades through the dark. Each one spat fire, their weapons tearing into shields and armor. They were not raiding, they were not hunting, they were waging war. But humanity was not afraid. The Vanguard's cannons thundered, lighting up the void with beams of pure energy. Railguns cracked, their shots ripping through enemy hulls with brutal precision. Torpedoes streaked forward, their trails glowing bright before smashing into raider vessels and tearing them apart. The human crew worked as one. Orders snapped, fingers flew across consoles, sweat dripped from brows, but no one faltered. Every man and woman on that warship knew what was at stake. Not just survival, but honor. Humanity never bowed to shadows. Enemy ships closing at Sector 4, a tactical officer shouted. Captain Adrian Kane's voice cut like steel. Rotate batteries, lock torpedoes, burn them down. The warship turned, its massive hull moving, with deadly grace. A fresh volley of human fire tore into the approaching raiders. 2 ships vanished in explosions. A third spun helplessly, its engines burning before shattering into debris. The crew cheered, but Elias stayed silent. He could see the larger picture. For every alien ship destroyed, more slipped out of the darkness. They were endless, like the void itself. An explosion rocked the Vanguard. The deck shuddered, lights flickered. The aliens had scored a hit. Sparks rained down from a console, smoke filled the air. A young officer coughed, wiping blood from his forehead, but his hands never left the controls. Shields at 60%, he cried. Hold them steady, Kane barked. We're not done yet, the Vanguard answered with fury. Its forward cannons unleashed a storm of fire, blasting through 3 raiders in one sweeping arc. The void flashed, then fell dark again, pieces of alien metal drifting like ashes. Elias's heart pounded. This was humanity at its best. Outnumbered, outgunned, but unbroken. Still, the shadows pressed closer. One raider slipped past the barrage, racing straight toward the warship's underbelly. It fired a stream of plasma carving across the hull. The ship groaned, alarms blaring. Engine compartment hit, a voice screamed. Kane's fists slammed the console. Seal it. Redirect. Power. The crew obeyed, their movements sharp, precise. The warship bled, but it did not fall. Elias whispered to himself. Steel doesn't break. Steel fights back. The next moment proved him right. The Vanguard unleashed its full wrath. A broadside of railguns thundered together, tearing through. 6 raiders in a single brutal strike. The explosion lit the stars brighter than a sun. For a heartbeat, the void fell silent again. But then more shadows appeared. Larger this time. Raiders gave way to cruisers. Alien warships with thick armor and heavy cannons. The true enemy had arrived. Elias's stomach dropped. He had seen cruisers before. These were no raiders. These were fleet killers. The crew fell silent as the alien cruisers moved into formation. Their weapons glowed, charging for a strike that could cripple the Vanguard in one blow. Kane did not hesitate. Her voice was fire. All batteries, target lead cruiser, fire everything we've got. The Vanguard obeyed. Every cannon, every torpedo, every railgun unleashed at once. The void shook with human fury. The lead cruiser staggered, its shields cracking, its hull breaking apart. But it was not enough. The other cruisers returned fire. A wall of plasma tore across space, slamming into the Vanguard. The ship screamed as decks shuddered, flames erupting across the interior. Men and women were thrown from their stations, the air filled with smoke and alarms. Shields at 30%, hull breach in Section 7, casualties reported. Elias staggered as the deck tilted. He caught himself on the railing, his mind screaming for focus. The ship was strong, but how much longer could it endure? Kane stood tall, unbroken, her voice cutting through chaos. We are humanity's shield. We do not fall. Reload and fire again. The crew roared in answer. Their hands moved, their weapons charged, and the Vanguard fired once more. Another cruiser shattered under the storm. Another alien giant fell, but 2 still remained, and they were closing in. Elias's chest tightened. This was not just survival anymore. This was war, pure and brutal, fought with fire and steel. Humanity was proving itself in the oldest way possible, not through words, not through hope, but through battle. And though the shadows pressed closer, Elias felt pride burn through his fear, because in that clash of fire and steel, one truth echoed across the stars. Humans do not break. Humans fight. The Vanguard groaned like a wounded beast. Smoke poured through its decks. Sparks rained down from shattered consoles, and alarms screamed across every corridor. Outside, the void burned. Alien cruisers fired without mercy, their cannons flooding the black with light and death. Captain. Elias Ward clung to the railing on the observation deck. His muscles trembled, his ribs ached, but his eyes refused to close. He had survived silence, hunger, and fear. He would survive this fire too, if humanity's steel held. But the Vanguard was dying. Shields at 12%, a voice cried. Engines failing. Coolant lines ruptured. Casualties across decks 4 through 9. Every report was worse than the last. Yet still, Captain Adrienne Kane stood firm at the command station. Her face was streaked with sweat and soot, but her voice carried like iron. Focus fire on their second cruiser. Bring it down before it finishes us. The warship's cannons fired again, ripping into alien hull. Another cruiser staggered under the storm, but the aliens answered with brutal precision. Plasma fire carved across the Vanguard, punching holes through steel. One blast slammed into the starboard side, right where the rescue craft and hangars were housed. Elias felt his stomach drop. His only way out had just been destroyed. The deck lurched violently. He crashed against the wall, pain slicing through his side. When he pushed himself up, he saw the truth in the eyes of the crew. They were fighting with everything, but there were too many shadows. Then Kane's voice cut through the chaos. Ward, we're pulling you out. Rescue team, prepare shuttle 2. Elias shook his head. No, I won't be dead weight. This is your fight. Kane's gaze locked on him, sharp as steel. You're alive because we came for you. That makes you our responsibility. End of discussion. Before he could protest again, a pair of armored soldiers grabbed him, pulling him toward the hangar. The ship shook under fire, and Elias knew every step could be his last. The hangar doors opened. Shuttle 2 waited, its engines burning faint blue. Smoke filled the bay, but the crew worked with desperate speed, fueling and arming the craft. Move, a soldier shouted, pushing Elias toward the ramp. He hesitated, looking back at the Vanguard. The great warship fought on, cannons blazing, shields flickering. It looked like a titan bleeding in the dark, refusing to kneel. Leaving it felt like betrayal, but another explosion roared through the bay, fire raining from above. He had no choice. He staggered into the shuttle. The ramp closed. The pilot's voice rang out. Hold tight. We're cutting through the storm. The shuttle blasted from the hangar. At once the void swallowed it in fire. Alien ships swarmed the Vanguard, and the small shuttle was now a bright target in the chaos. Alarms screamed. Plasma bolts flashed, passed close enough to shake the hull. One shot grazed the wing, tearing off metal. Elias gripped his seat so hard his knuckles went white. They're locking on, the pilot yelled. The shuttle weaved between debris and fire, dodging shot after shot. But the aliens were merciless. 2 raider craft broke formation, chasing the shuttle like wolves hunting prey. Ward, the pilot growled. If they catch us, it's over. Elias's chest tightened. He had no weapons, no controls, nothing but his voice. And so he whispered the only thing he could. Hold on, just hold on. The Vanguard is still with us. As if in answer, the great warship fired. Beams of energy streaked past the shuttle, striking the pursuing raiders. One ship exploded in flame. The second spun out of control, colliding with its own ally. The shuttle surged forward, breaking free of the swarm. But they weren't safe yet. Ahead, the alien cruiser loomed, massive and burning, still alive, still firing. Its cannons turned toward the tiny shuttle, preparing to erase it. The pilot swore under his breath. We can't dodge that, Elias's heart froze. After all this, after silence, after fire, after hope, would it all end here? Then a voice crackled over the comms. Captain Kane, Shuttle 2, keep moving. We'll cover you. The Vanguard charged. Its remaining cannons blazed, every weapon firing in one last desperate strike. The cruiser's guns lit up, spitting fire, but the human warship did not falter. It slammed into the storm head-on, shielding the shuttle with its own body. The cruiser's weapons tore through the Vanguard's hull, but at the same time, human torpedoes ripped into the alien's core. Both ships burned in fire, locked in mutual destruction. The shuttle cleared the blast radius just as the alien cruiser exploded. The shockwave hurled it forward, spinning through the void. Elias was thrown against his seat, his breath crushed from his lungs. When the shuttle steadied, he turned to the viewport. The HSS Vanguard floated in the distance, broken, burning, but alive. Smoke poured from its wounds, lights flickered across its hull, yet it had not fallen. Tears blurred Elias's vision. He whispered, almost to himself, "Humans, we never bow." The pilot exhaled sharply. "We're through the fire, Captain. You're safe now." Safe. The word rang hollow. Elias knew none of them were safe. Not yet. The shadows would return, bigger, stronger. This was only the beginning. But as the shuttle carried him away, he felt pride burn brighter than fear. Humanity had shown the void what it meant to fight. And as long as even one warship still stood, the shadows could never claim victory. The shuttle drifted through the void, carrying Captain Elias Ward away from the battlefield. Behind him, the HSS Vanguard floated like a wounded titan. Its hull was torn, smoke poured from its wounds, and its shields flickered weakly. Yet it had not fallen. Elias pressed his hand against the viewport. His eyes burned, not from smoke, but from the weight of everything he had seen. The silence that once threatened to bury him had been shattered by fire, courage, and sacrifice. Humanity had answered him, and it had paid the price in blood and steel. The pilot's voice was low. "We're clear, Captain. No enemy signatures nearby." Elias nodded but did not speak. His heart was too heavy, too full. He thought of the crew still aboard the Vanguard, fighting fires, sealing hull breaches, tending to the wounded. He thought of Captain Adrian Kane, standing tall against the storm, refusing to surrender even when death pressed on all sides. Humans were fragile. Their bodies broke easily, their ships burned, their lives ended in seconds. And yet Elias realized it was not strength of body that kept them alive. It was something deeper, something that no alien swarm could understand. It was spirit. The shuttle docked with the warship's damaged hangar. The bay was chaos, smoke, broken metal, medics rushing with stretchers. Yet through the destruction, there was life. The crew moved with purpose. No one cried, no one panicked. They worked together, each person carrying the weight of the others. When Elias stepped onto the deck, he was greeted not with celebration, but with determination. Men and women nodded to him, their faces dirty, their uniforms torn, but their eyes steady. "You're alive," one officer said simply. "That's what matters." Elias wanted to argue. He wanted to say that what mattered was them, their sacrifice, their fight. But the words caught in his throat. Instead, he gave a single nod. Captain Kane appeared from the smoke, her uniform scorched, her arm wrapped in makeshift bandages. She looked like she had walked through fire itself, and yet her voice was strong. "We held the line," she said. "Yes," Elias whispered, "but at what cost?" Kane's gaze did not waver. "At the only cost we were willing to pay. We're human, Ward. We fight for each other. That's what makes us different. That's what makes us dangerous to anyone who thinks they can break us." Elias stared at her. In that moment, he understood. The aliens could send endless ships, endless shadows, endless fire. But they would never understand why humans kept standing. It wasn't technology. It wasn't numbers. It was loyalty. The unshakable bond that one human had for another. He thought back to the silence, to the days he had drifted alone in the dark. He had been ready to die, but someone had answered. Without hesitation, without doubt, a warship had come for him. That was humanity's truth. No one was left behind. As the hours passed, the crew repaired what they could. Fires were extinguished, breaches sealed. The warship was scarred, but alive. When Elias walked the corridors, he saw tired smiles, hands clasped on shoulders, quiet laughter despite the pain. Humans had a strange gift. They could look at ruin and still find hope. Later, standing once more at the observation deck, Elias stared at the stars. The void stretched endless and cold, but he did not fear it anymore. Somewhere out there, more enemies were waiting. He knew the swarm would return. He knew this battle had only been the beginning, but he also knew this: humanity would be ready. Kane stood beside him, silent for a long time. Finally, she said, "You survived when no one should have. Do you know why?" Elias shook his head. "Because you're human," she said simply. "And humans don't stop. Not in silence, not in fire, not in war." Her words sank deep. Elias felt the weight of them settle in his chest, not as a burden, but as a flame. He turned to the stars, his voice steady. "Then let the shadows come. Let them swarm. They'll learn what we already know." "And what's that?" Kane asked. "That the human spirit doesn't break." The two captains stood in silence, watching the stars together. The void no longer felt empty. It felt alive, with promise, with danger, with destiny. Elias knew this was not the end of his story. It was not even the end of humanity's struggle. It was the beginning of something greater. For in the endless dark of space, one truth now, burned brighter than any star: humans fight for each other. And because of that, humans will endure.